Good afternoon, and welcome to this Columbia World Leaders Forum event, which is co-sponsored with the Weatherhead East Asian Institute. It is my great pleasure to welcome our distinguished guest here today, President Benigno Aquino of the Philippines. For Benigno Aquino, a passion for and a commitment to political freedom is a matter of family inheritance. His father, senator, and opposition leader, Benigno Aquino Jr., was assassinated in 1983 for his work against Ferdinand Marcos's authoritarian rule. After his father's death, Mr. Aquino's mother, Corazon, became a leader in the People Power Revolution, which was instrumental in the deposition of Marcos. She then served as the country's first female president. The election of Mr. Aquino in 2010 was an auspicious moment for a country that, like every democracy, has struggled to see its ideals fully realized. While the Philippines stands ready to capitalize on opportunity, progress has brought with it significant challenges and moments of reevaluation. Promising to put an end to the corruption which was plaguing the country's politics, Mr. Aquino was elected with broad public support. Soon thereafter, he made the first steps towards fulfilling that pledge, establishing a Truth Commission to investigate those suspected of corruption and to restore public confidence in government leaders. Under Mr. Aquino's administration, the country has experienced a reprieve from the separatist unrest of previous decades. Earlier this year, the Philippine government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, the country's largest Muslim rebel group, struck a long-sought peace agreement, effectively ending 40 years of separatist violence that has claimed more than 120,000 lives. A bill currently awaiting congressional approval would establish an autonomous Muslim region in the south of the country. While President Aquino's successful efforts to increase transparency and accountability have been met with approval, other endeavors have faced stark criticism. For example, his plan to accelerate government spending spawned popular protests and was declared to be unconstitutional by the nation's Supreme Court just last month. Home to one of the most robust democratic free press environments in Asia, the Philippines also remains one of the most dangerous places in the world for journalists. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, at least 74 members of the media have been killed for their work since 1992. And impunity for these crimes remains distressingly high. In 2009 alone, 34 journalists were among those kidnapped and brutally murdered in what was known as the Maguindanao Massacre. Our own Dean of Academic Affairs at Columbia's Journalism School, Sheila Cornell, braved this dangerous realm for many years. She and her colleagues formed the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, which stands as a model for the role of journalism to expose the abuses of power. In addition to these domestic challenges, the country's geographic location leaves it vulnerable to a constant threat of natural disaster, a threat that was made all too real by the devastating typhoon that swept across the country last year. Continued infrastructural problems have meant intermittent blackouts, damaged roads, and in some cases, lack of running water. However, in the face of the tragic losses and immense difficulties, the Philippines has admirably persevered in its recovery and rebuilding efforts. Recent economic growth has sown hope for the new opportunities in manufacturing and technology in a country with the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia and a young, rapidly expanding labor force. President Aquino's address this evening will undoubtedly deepen our understanding of these challenges as well as the opportunities for a nation moving toward realizing its extraordinary potential. Please join me in welcoming the President to the podium. Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. Columbia University President Mr. Lee Bollinger and Mrs. Jean Magnanum Bollinger. Secretary Albert Rosario, Ambassador Joey Quisha, Ambassador Philip Goldberg, Secretary Cesar Purisima, Secretary Corazon Soliman, Secretary Gregory Domingo, Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, Secretary Jose Renel Medras, Secretary Julia Abad, Secretary Herminio Coloma Jr., Consul General Mario De Leon, faculty, staff, and students of Columbia University, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. 42 years ago today, Ferdinand Marcos appeared on television to announce the imposition of martial law. I was 12 years old when martial law was declared in the Philippines, ushering about 14 years of dictatorship. At that time, perhaps, I was unable to understand in full the gravity of the situation. What I understood, however, was that my father, then Senator Benigno S. Aquino Jr., was arrested and imprisoned, all because Ferdinand Marcos feared my father's unflagging courage in speaking out against the abuses of the dictatorship. It did not take long before the rest of the Philippines felt the grip of authoritarian rule. Soldiers and checkpoints filled the streets. Media outlets were turned into propaganda machines. Anyone could be thrown in jail for expressing an opinion against the government. Under Mr. Marcos, the freedom that our forefathers fought and died for became a seemingly impossible dream. My family gained a brief respite when my father was allowed to receive medical treatment in Dallas and eventually settled in Boston. We lived there for 3 years as a normal family in the midst of what can only be described as an abnormal situation back home. But my father, knowing that the dictator was surrounded by flatterers and sycophants, believed that Mr. Marcos might have increasingly become detached from reality. He remained hopeful, however, for a dialogue, wanting to lay down the real situation to the dictator, how our people had grown so disillusioned that even previously moderate actors were turning towards militancy, and how civil war was becoming a real possibility in our country. My father chose to return to the Philippines, and as he alighted from the airplane, before even setting foot on Philippine soil, he was assassinated. His death ignited a nonviolent movement that would culminate in the EDSA People Power Revolution, so named for the millions who crowded EDSA, one of our country's major thoroughfares. There, tanks and armed soldiers were sent. They were met with the prayers and songs of millions who believed in democracy, in the future of the Philippines, and in the power of the ordinary citizen. My mother, Corazon Aquino, was one such citizen who rose to the task of restoring democracy to the Philippines and nurturing it after the end of martial law. My father once said that the Filipino is worth dying for. Through the difficult years of my mother's presidency, she in turn devoted herself to proving that the Filipino was also worth living for. Unfortunately, not all presidents who followed my mother shared their belief. To some, democracy was a tool to be manipulated. Power was a seat to be claimed from which one could impose his or her own will upon the people. This was most apparent in the 9.5-year administration of my predecessor. Instead of learning the lessons of history under the dictatorship, she seemed to have taken a course on how to abuse the system, straight from Mr. Marcos's playbook. Through the years of the lost decade, the government decayed, weakened by corruption and impunity. Businesses became more afraid to invest in the Philippines for lack of a level playing field and stability in the political climate. The Filipino people once again lost hope in the prospects of the country. Many sought greener pastures abroad. Yet there were some who remained hopeful for the Philippines, as my father believed, and as he would have said in his arrival statement had he not been assassinated. And I quote, "Yes, the Filipino is patient, but there is a limit to his patience," close quote. The Filipino people reached that limit once again in 2010. In another strong display of people power, they filled the polling stations and voted for the primary ideal behind our campaign, which was, where there is no corruption, there will be no poverty. Now I stand there as president of a country that has risen from the ashes of a lost decade. From day one, we have strived to render true service to our people, to grant them once more the capacity to hope. Allow me to give a few examples of the challenges we have had to face and the steps we took and are continuing to take to surmount these challenges. As our campaign battle cry made evident, the first challenge was to restore integrity to government. The playing field was skewed towards the favored few. To level it meant holding to account those who had exploited the system for personal gain. For example, when evidence was found implicating my predecessor, plunder charges were filed against her, and she was arrested. When it was proven that the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, supposedly the foremost guardian of our Constitution, had violated it by failing to declare 98% of his assets in his Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth, fellow reformists in the legislature removed him from office. When evidence of plunder came up against 3 incumbent senators, they were placed in detention, where today they face plunder charges which are non-bailable. The message is clear. Gone are the days when money, power, and influence determined one's innocence or guilt. The second challenge ran parallel with the first. Along with holding public officials or airing public officials to account, there was also the need to pursue large-scale reforms in agencies whose names had become synonymous with corruption. Agencies such as our Department of Public Works and Highways underwent a massive transformation. Paperwork was cut down and bidding procedures were simplified. These had the dual effect of minimizing opportunities for corruption and attracting even more bidders. These reforms have also allowed our DPWH to save around 28 billion pesos, equivalent to around $628 million, which then could be used to fund the next phases of the projects previously approved by Congress. Reforms plugged the leakages in the system and made for a more efficient bureaucracy. These freed up resources, which allowed us to respond to the third challenge. For a long time, social services were used not as a means of empowering the people, but as a tool for political patronage. Our health and education systems were in a dismal state, and the poor could not even begin to dream of breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty. This has changed. From the beginning, we channeled our resources to the wisest possible investment, which is the Filipino people. Under our watch, budgets for social welfare, education, and health increased in multiples. Our flagship initiative, a conditional cash transfer program, targeted at the poorest of the poor, the primary condition being that they should ensure that their children attend school. And now, we have acquired the wherewithal to expand this program further to include families with children up to 18 years of age. This is because of a study showing that our high school graduates earn 40% more than those who only finished the elementary years. On top of this, critical resource gaps in education were bridged. Backlogs in classrooms, school seats, and textbooks were all addressed within 3 years of our term. Lead agencies for education and skills training linked with private industry to find out which sectors held the most opportunities, then proceeded to train Filipinos and help them find employment. For health, we expanded the scope and coverage of our government health insurance system. Now it covers both the most common ailments and the diseases that are most catastrophic to Filipino families, including leukemia and breast cancer, amongst others. The fourth challenge has to do with addressing our vulnerabilities. An average of 20 tropical storms enter the Philippine area of responsibility every year. Recent years, however, have shown us an alarming turn of events, what we refer to as the new normal, of increasingly strong storms arriving at increasingly close intervals, even coming out of season. This presents a problem. For example, for agriculture, a sector so weather-dependent, that erratic weather patterns wreak havoc on the planting and harvesting seasons, and therefore on the lives of our farmers. This is on top of the massive destruction that some typhoons cause. This is why, from the beginning of our administration, we have equipped ourselves with the wherewithal to minimize the damage wrought by these storms in the Philippines. These have come in the form of Doppler radars strategically placed around the country, hydrometeorological devices, and early warning systems. Excuse me. Along with a website through which Filipinos can access real-time weather information. Storm and rainfall warnings are regularly sent out to the public hours, if not days ahead of time. Every effort, excuse me, Every effort has been made to maximize the security and preparedness of every single citizen. The reality, though, is that no single nation can confront the problem of climate change alone. This was the painful lesson that Typhoon Haiyan taught us in late 2013. As I put forward during the UN Climate Change Summit earlier today, it would not be an exaggeration to say that developing countries, such as the Philippines, bear a disproportionate amount of vulnerability. We believe that it will take a concerted global effort to rise to what is perhaps the most significant challenge of our time, and the Philippines is ready to fulfill its fair role in this. Dismantling the culture of corruption, establishing a level playing field, strategically investing in the people and addressing their vulnerabilities have allowed the Philippines to realize its long-dormant economic potential. Average growth from 2010 to 2013 under administration was pegged at 6.3%. To compare, from 2006 to 2009, economic growth was pegged at only 4.3%. Since we came into office, there have been 20 positive credit ratings actions directed at the Philippines. In 2013, all three major credit rating agencies were unanimous in upgrading the Philippines to investment grade, the first time that this had ever happened in our history. These ratings actions come at a time of greater conservatism for these ratings agencies, owing to the scrutiny that came after the global economic downturn. Philippine manufacturing has rebounded, growing 10.8% in the second quarter of this year. We continue to welcome record high numbers of tourists, and more investors from all over the world are placing their bets on the Filipino people. Of course, none of this is to say that our work is done. There are always challenges on the horizon. Among others, we are undergoing a systemic transformation of our public transport system and implementing a long-delayed modernization of our armed forces. With the peace talks between government and Muslim secessionists successfully concluded, the task of boosting up Muslim Mindanao so it can catch up with the rest of the country can begin. That is why, a few days before I left on this extended trip, I formally turned over to Congress a draft Bangsamoro Basic Law, which, when passed, will be another significant milestone in our quest for peace and inclusiveness in the conflict-ridden, underdeveloped south of our country. The challenges will continue to come, but indeed, one can see how the questions have evolved. Once, when confronted with disaster, the question on government's minds was, how do we rebuild? Now the question we ask is, how do we build back better? Once the question on our people's minds was, is reform possible? Now the question they are asking is, how can we guarantee the permanence of reform? My entire life, I've witnessed my people do incredible things. They resisted the dictatorship, drove a peaceful revolution that captured the imagination of the world, stood firmly and often against tyranny and corruption whenever they reared their ugly heads, and worked tirelessly to put our country back on the map. For so long, we have endured the tyranny of self-serving administrations and the indifference of the world. But now, finally, my country, once an often overlooked archipelago in the Pacific, is poised to remain in the spotlight. As proof of what a mobilized citizenry and a government of integrity are capable of. Thank you for your patience, and good evening.
Thank you so much, President Aquino, for those extremely valuable remarks. You've given us a wonderful and succinct overview of the challenges, the political, the social, and the economic challenges that the Philippines is facing. I'm Duncan McCargo on behalf of the Weatherhead East Asian Institute. We're the bit of Columbia University that covers this not so forgotten, this very important part of the world, Southeast Asia and the Philippines and other countries in the region. And it's a wonderful opportunity to have you here because we're more and more interested in teaching and sharing information and exchange about this part of the world. In this capacity, it falls to me to have the opportunity to call for questions. If there are people in the audience who would like to ask the President some questions, would you please go to the microphones? You'll see there are microphones on either side of the central aisles there, and I'll be able to take some of those questions once you're ready. I'd ask people to try to keep your questions nice and succinct so that we can get through as many different points as we possibly can, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who have things to say this evening. Thank you very much. On this side.
Good afternoon, President. Welcome to Columbia, and it is our honor to have you today here. My name is Louis Choi. I am an international student coming from Hong Kong. In 2010, 8 Hong Kong people died in the Manila hostage crisis. Some Hong Kong people believe that the Philippine police did not do a good job in rescuing the hostage, resulting in this accident. And then the Chinese government actually rejected the explanation given by you, the President, at the press conference, August 24, 2010. So my question is, what's your perspective at this moment? What do you think about this accident? And how do you prevent such an accident from happening again? Or any steps will be taken? And Hong Kong people were not very happy about because you smiled when you were actually mentioning about the accident during the press conference. So what do you think about that? And at the end, thank you so much for you to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Can I answer the last portion first, or react to the last portion? When I was smiling, perhaps it's my own coping mechanism. I smile when there's something of intense absurdity that I'm confronted with. The people involved, the police official involved in charge of the operations, failed to follow instructions. And he is actually undergoing various administrative and other procedural aspects to correct his lapses at that point in time. It was roughly, I was in office for about a month. Perhaps they weren't comfortable taking orders from me at that point in time. Now, we regret that such an incident happened. We pride ourselves on our hospitality. And we had tried to wear down the person who was, shall we say, at the very least mentally unbalanced at that point in time. Various errors happened. Too much intrusive media became, instead of just reporting the incident, became a participant of the same. Lessons were definitely learned. These have been incorporated with regards to our procedures in handling similar situations. And I guess I can point out to the success of the operations against some Muslim secessionists in the city of Zamboanga City, wherein we managed to rescue 195 of 197 hostages. So I think we have learned significant lessons. We do not claim perfection, but we do admit that at that point in time, our security services were severely lacking. And again, to the entire Hong Kong people, we regret that such an incident happened in our soil.
Thank you. Okay, can I ask everybody, by the way, to introduce themselves when they ask their question? Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Bob Dietz. I'm the Asia Program Coordinator for the Committee to Protect Journalists. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you. Your administration has taken the criticism very seriously that journalists are still being killed with impunity in the Philippines, an issue that was raised by President Bollinger in his introduction. CPJ recently spoke with Justice Secretary De Lima while we were in Manila on a 3-week trip investigating the murder of journalists and the government's response to it. And she spoke glowingly of your administration's efforts to address this problem, not only the killing of journalists, but the impunity surrounding those killings. But despite this approach of your government, it looks like this problem is going to persist, and even with the best intentions and the best efforts on your part and your administration's part. And I raise this question in concert with Professor Carnell, who is a member of CPJ's board. At this point, we're wondering, what is it that the international community can do to be of assistance to the Philippines government that can help you address this problem of not only the killing of journalists in the Philippines, but the impunity which surrounds those deaths? Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz, for the question. Perhaps the impunity question has to be put in the proper context. When I talked to Secretary De Lima, amongst other members of our Justice Department, I emphasized that it is not the mere identification of assailants that is the end-all and be-all. There has to be conviction. There has to be certainty of punishment for all of these things that have happened. And they have, in turn, secured quite a number of convictions for those involved in extra legal killings. And of course, determining actually those that fall under the question of extrajudicial or extralegal killings. Now, what can the international community do? We have had a lot of training with various police forces to improve our forensic gathering capabilities. We have been refining the witness protection program to encourage the witnesses to come forth and actually testify. We do hold ourselves accountable to protecting the rights of all, especially even those that we abhor, because that is, in essence, how it should be done. My father once taught me that it is not, in defending the rights of your friends is easy, defending the rights of your enemies is the true test of a democracy. The problem is the very lengthy process for judicial system. In the Maguindanao massacre earlier mentioned by President Bollinger, you have, I think, over 100 assailants going through the process of being arraigned, preliminary investigations to determine culpability, the rigors of an adversarial trial. No. And if, on the other hand, if we were to perform quick justice, shall we say, change the processes, then we probably would be accused of violating the rights. So I'd like to stress that in a lot of instances, the killings were not related to their jobs, but were for other reasons. Now, the main point that we have raised is a killing is a killing, and it's a violation of the law. And regardless of who did it and why he did it, there have to be penalties under our laws. So the emphasis is solving the crime correctly, which means not producing any suspect, just any other suspect. Second, successfully prosecuting the same. And penultimately, there has to be certainty of punishment when you commit a crime, and that is still a work in progress. And I think we can point to several successes in this field, but the others really, just by the sheer number of those of the plaintiffs, it really will take time to go through the processes that are enshrined in our Constitution and our laws.
I'm sorry, we have to take the questions from people at the microphone. So if you want to ask a question, please wait your turn. Sorry, you have to wait your turn at the microphone, and then we'll be able to take your question. Sorry, I want to go to the next question. Can you please wait your turn? Sorry, you may have your turn if you wait in line.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask my question?
So I need to take the next question.
I think the emphasis is that there are more questions coming from the Filipino people that aren't being answered. There are so many things that are happening. 1.5.
Please do join the line. Okay, you're welcome to ask your question. We have an opportunity for you to ask your question. Please just wait, and you will have the chance. In fact, you have the opportunity, you just have to wait over there. That will be fine.
I am currently speaking to the person who is representative of all the people for me. For all of you out there, please see what they are doing to us. We tried to come up with facts. 1.5 billion pesos are no longer.
Okay, I would like to go to the next question. We're not stopping anybody from asking a question. You just need to wait your turn, please.
I can step asking that, but I need you all to join me as I say, no justice, no peace, no stop the killing in the Philippines, no justice, no peace, stop the killing in the Philippines. You're all silent right now. Talk to yourself about why you are. No justice.
Okay, please go ahead with the next question.
Hi, Mr.
The microphone is on. Yeah.
Hi, Mr. President. My name is Tao. Warm welcome to Columbia University. Philippines and China are now allowed in territory dispute regarding South China Sea. The Chinese government proposed that we put aside the disputes and seek joint development. What is your opinion about this? Thank you.
Well, sir, we have no objections to joint development so long as, for instance, they are going to occur in our exclusive economic zone, then they have to conform to Philippine law. Now, that debate is, I think, as to whose law should apply in whose exclusive economic zone. Thank you.
Good
Okay, can we go to
afternoon.
this side? Yes, thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Liwaiwai Arce. I am a Master of Law student from Columbia University, and I was, before coming here, I was a Court of Appeals attorney at the Court of Appeals of the Philippines. In 2010, I was one of the many supporters who campaigned for you because we were attracted to your campaign slogan, which was Daang Matuwid. To everybody who does not speak Filipino, Daang Matuwid represents the anti-corruption campaign of the president. And it actually means a straight path. Unfortunately, just recently, some of your topmost or highest officials in government, some are cabinet members, have been implicated in issues questioning their integrity. So how do you assure us that that campaign slogan, 5 years into your presidency, is still applies not just to your friends, but also to everybody under the Philippine flag?
I think we need to talk about specifics. I assume you're referring to the issues of the disbursement acceleration program, correct?
Yes, sir, and also I think Secretary Purisima's statement of assets and liabilities.
Ma'am, you should read the article. I think they were referring to Director General Purisima's statement of assets and liabilities.
Okay.
They are two distinct individuals. Okay. Okay. Can I tackle the disbursement acceleration program? Okay. What was the problem? In 2011, hours before the State of the Nation address, the report of the Cabinet as to accomplishments within our first year of office. There was a report specifically from the Department of Education who said out of the target of about 8,000 plus classrooms for that year, they had accomplished only 18. And this was July, end of July, last Monday of July of 2011. They were asked why, and the second question was, what can they hope to accomplish by the end of the year? To which they replied, at maximum between 3,000 to 4,000 of the projected 8,000 each. We came into office with 66,800 classrooms lacking. We would produce 8,000 a year. That was what was the budget could support. 6 times 6 would produce 48,000, correct? Now, at the end of the term, assuming we were on schedule, we would still have a deficit. So the question was, what would you do with the budget? No? Would you leave it with DepEd, who guaranteed you that they could not spend the funds allocated to them for the remainder of the year, or transfer it to a more efficient agency who would in turn, in the next budget session, have less of a demand on the national budget, to which their less demands on the budget can be brought back to DepEd so that they can catch up. Under the Administrative Code of 1987, our law, EO 292, and your lawyer, you should probably look it up, under section 36, if I'm not mistaken, 39. It says any item in the budget that suffers a deficit can be augmented by another item in the budget. Okay? This practice has been done by all administrations prior to mine after our EDSA revolution. Lately, the Supreme Court has decided that it is not in conformity with Article 5, no, sorry, Article, it's hard to do it all by memory. Anyway, 25.5 of Article 6, if I'm not mistaken, correct. Okay. They say that they... Can I
sorry,
finish
can we...
answering the question?
I'm sorry, everyone's welcome to ask the questions, but please, can we keep the discussion civil? The President's agreed to take all your questions, so just wait your turn and you can ask. It's not a problem.
Continue with the answer. The Supreme Court basically, in effect, said our actions in conformity to that particular law were not consistent with the Constitution. They also said that we have to prove good faith and also, that, in effect, to prove our innocence. Now, again, as a lawyer, and perhaps you can enlighten me on this, I'm not a lawyer, can you have a law still existing in the book when actions in pursuit of it become unconstitutional? Isn't the first step to declare that particular law unconstitutional, then say the acts that were in furtherance of it were wrong? Now, if that is correct, there is supposed to be a concept called the operative fact doctrine, wherein when you were complying religiously with the law, then you cannot be blamed if at some point in the future it is deemed unconstitutional. You cannot be faulted retroactively. Am I incorrect in any of the assumptions that I've had? That is, if I'm correct, that is the basis for the motion of reconsideration we have filed with the Supreme Court, and which is currently under deliberations by them. So, at the end of the day, we were made to decide. Do we keep it in various departments who promised us, who guaranteed to us that they could not use it? Do we keep it there and deprive the people of the good that can come from expenditure? You must remember that when Congress says you're authorized to spend on this or that, there is a common good that is sought to be achieved. So not delivering it denies the good. And if the department tasked with providing the good tells you there is no way they can do it, can you, in good moral conscience, say, let us keep it to where it will not be put to use? So we believe we were empowered by that law. There has been a review. We have been very transparent as to where this went and why it went there. And this is now up to the Supreme Court to determine whether or not there was a wrong with it. We just finished an impeachment process in our Congress. And besides the 3 who filed the complaint, or part of the 7 who filed the complaint, the whole Committee on Justice supported our position on this.
How about the second issue, Mr. President?
Sorry, the intervening issue clouded my mind. What was the second issue?
The high-ranking officials in your government which are implicated in integrity questions.
Then, we actually have several websites that deal with the integrity issue. There's a program called RIPS, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is my 91st engagement since leaving the Philippines, so I will beg your indulgence if I'm a bit showing exhaustion already. But revenue integrity protection service. This is a website where you can report people in charge of collecting our revenues who you suspect of engaging in corrupt practices. You have it's in the Pera ng Bayan website. Pera ng Bayan translates to money of the state, of the people. Now, there's an ongoing lifestyle check with the Philippine National Police. That's where Mr. Purisima is located. The Ombudsman has been very active in filing cases left and right and conducting preliminary investigations. The COA has been coming up with very zealous reports. COA is our Commission on Audit on exactly where questions arise out of expenditure of the people's funds. So when there are processes involved to determine when you're accused, and I guess if you're in government service, you're accused, you're also entitled to presumption of innocence until you're proven guilty. So we ask and encourage everybody that has a particular case or any case and to present the appropriate evidence to the bodies in our Constitution and our laws that are tackled or are supposed to tackle questions of integrity and resolve it.
But has any?
I'm sorry. I think we need to go to the other side now. We've had a couple of very good points.
If you don't mind, can I answer that? Has anybody been made to pay? How many people? My predecessor is in jail. 3 of our senators incumbent are also in jail. Their cohorts in the pork barrel scam are also in jail, in detention, awaiting trial.
Any from the Liberal Party, Mr. President?
There are 2 that have been accused that have posted bail because they were not charged with plunder previously. Grace Padaka and Neris Acosta come to mind. Perhaps you should look at other websites besides the ones you've been watching.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Right, we can go over to the other side. I'd just like to stress this is a place of free expression. We all have a chance to ask questions. We just like everybody to wait their turn, and then you'll have a chance. No holds barred. It's all fine. Just let's maintain an air of civility becoming to this venerable building and this great university. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Ben Swanson. I'm a first year at Columbia College, and I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, down south. And I've read a fair amount about your administration's efforts to negotiate with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. And my understanding is that you've successfully concluded peace negotiations with them pursuant to Congress passing a law essentially giving a section of the southern Philippines autonomy. And you said yourself earlier that that law is now under review by Congress. And I'm curious how likely you think it is that Congress will approve that law in its current form, and what you think the prospects for peace negotiations look like if Congress does not soon approve that law.
Well, it will really be a serious setback if Congress doesn't approve that law. But I think anybody who would position, there will be grandstanding, of course. But at the end of the day, opposition to it will label you as anti-peace. And I don't think any politician would want to be labeled as anti-peace, specifically also in that portion of the country, which has had the misfortune of having this long-running insurgency dating from the late 60s, which has claimed so many lives. And hopefully, the resources that have been devoted to the Bangsamoro under administration, under the armed setup, will already be showing impact as to the betterment of the lives of the people there. So again, anybody who opposes it and doesn't come up with a cogent reason as why they would oppose it would then be anti-peace and would probably have very little supporters come election time, which will happen in about 2 years' time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. President. My name is Isabel Laxon, and I'm a second-year student at our School of International Public Affairs, studying public administration. And I hope no one will interrupt me, because I'm going to read. I consider it one of my life's greatest honors to have served under your administration for 3 years in the House of Representatives. And I came to Columbia last year with the intention of learning how to become a better public servant, with the hopes of returning to the Philippines after. My international colleagues find my intentions to be only natural, as many of them are here with the support of their government and are returning to their positions and bringing their new knowledge with them after school. However, fellow Filipinos always ask me, why would I return to our government and waste time? I'm sure that this comes as no surprise to you that many of our fellow countrymen find that public service should not even be considered by young people like me. My question to you is, what do you plan to do in your final years of your administration to counter this ingrained mindset? Or what do you hope that your successors implement to encourage young, talented individuals who hope to make a difference in our country? Of course, it's easy to say that the youth are the hope of the nation, but I believe that you boldly have taken the first step by addressing the issues of corruption in our administration, but what do you see as the next step for the youth to see government as a viable option?
Well, thank you, Isabel.
Yes.
Thank you for your really splendid thoughts. You have one of the members of my staff, formerly, who has resigned because he's taking a 2-year program here. I wonder if he should be the one to answer that.
I know him, Mr. President.
Okay. And then there are others.
Good friend of
My entire speech writing team is composed of people no older than 25. They have put on hold their lives. They think in their contributions, not the pay, the contributions are worthwhile. I guess let me answer it to you on a general basis. If there was a point in time in our country when in Tagalog we said, kung hindi ikaw, sino, at kung hindi ngayon, kailan. In English, that basically means if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And talking about changing the situation. So let me answer it in this manner. If you, by default, say, it's not worth my time, it's not worth my talents, let all of those people with various vested interests take over it, then exactly what hope of a good government can you have if you are not ready to engage? By default, you will give it all to them as opposed to you can challenge them. I'm president of the country right now, but I still have to contend with people who believe they have vested rights and they have entitlements more than any other citizen. Sometimes practically to my face, they continue their corrupt practices. And we will continue to challenge them because to do otherwise will be to perpetuate that which they're doing and to the detriment of everybody else. So I go back. If you feel compelled to put in your participation, then you choose not to because you think it might not amount to anything. Then you guarantee that it will go to the dogs because you left all the dogs to play in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. President. My name is Koichiro Maruta from Japan. I'm a student at the SIPA. My question is about the security. In 2000, the U.S. Army withdrew from your country. Some people point out that it will give neighboring countries like China give opportunity or rooms for insisting on territorial problems, and it will hire the possibility of future crisis in the future. So what do you think about the significance or the merit of this withdrawing? And do you think the merit will be valid for your country in the long run?
So, can I hear the last portion of the question again?
Yes, sorry. And do you think that the merit will be valid for your country in the long run?
But let me try to answer the question as I understood it. First, the Americans left not in 2000, if I remember correctly, in the early 90s. No?
Sorry.
Now, second, in a sense, that was a mutual decision to a certain degree. Now, currently, the Americans, through their former ambassador, said there is no intention to go back to that period of having bases everywhere and anywhere. Now, but the bottom line is we welcome America's intention to refocus on Asia. We think that they will be a stabilizing force. And where stability happens, there will be prosperity. So at the end of the day, we're basically just saying all of us are entitled with inalienable rights. Let us respect each other's rights and let us work towards attaining prosperity for all instead of inflaming tensions amongst and between us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Mr. President. And I'm an overseas student from China.
Sorry, I think we have to stop the questions at this point.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Can we take one last?
Mr. President, you'd like to make some final comments?
No, I can take this last question.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And we know that since your presidency, the Sino-Philippine relation has become tougher and tougher, and both sides claim the sovereignty of this island, and no one wants to make a concession. And I know you are bringing that case into the international court, but and the things has been put in a dilemma because no side is going to take the confession. So, will you meet President Xi in this November at Beijing, or do you have any plan to relieve the tension between the two countries, because they have to turn the relation has to turn to normal, you know?
Yes. Well, sir, not because I stepped into the presidency that I purposely seek to inflame tensions with China. They have been existing for decades. In fact, in 1997, the Philippines, recognizing these tensions, proposed the formulation of a code of conduct with ASEAN. They formally tackled this in the year 2002. They couldn't come up with a binding declaration. They came up with a statement of general principles called the Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Now, it is true, it's difficult to give up sovereignty by any state. That's why we have brought the case before the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, precisely to determine whose definitions and interpretations of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea is correct. Perhaps we're not totally wrong or we're not totally correct, and the other side is the same. At the end of the day, when there is a clear understanding accepted by all parties, then the tension should be managed better than it is now, where everything is so undefined and subject to so many conflicting claims that are, in a sense, irreconcilable with each other. So that is root that is embedded in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, to which both the Philippines and China are signatories, as a means of peacefully resolving disputes such as this. And we're hopeful that that resolution does happen, which leads to stability in the region, which enables an environment that can bring about prosperity for all. And that is our hope. And as a last point, in 2011, when I had a state visit to China and I talked to President Hu Jintao, President Hu Jintao stated that this should not be the be-all and end-all of our relations, and we have tried to do that. And as proof positive of this, in 2011 alone, investments by Philippine companies to China amounted to something like $2.5 billion. Investments by Chinese companies in the Philippine economy were about $600 million. Tourists that China sent to the Philippines numbered about 200,000 per annum. The Philippines sent China 800,000 tourists. So there is really room for prosperity for both and a natural affinity, in a sense, for both. But at the end of the day, I am tasked by our Constitution to defend our rights, and we are doing so in a peaceful, non-belligerent manner to the benefit of all parties concerned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have to draw the question part of the session to an end, but thank you very much indeed, Mr. President, for your patience and all your responses to some challenging questions. We talked about challenges. We had some challenging questions in a very free, fair, sort of frank atmosphere. Thank you.
President Aquino, let me say that I would like to apologize for the interruptions of you and the audience. Of course, we believe in freedom of speech like you do. Everything should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, as we say in the United States. But there's no right to interrupt an academic forum like this, and we appreciate your patience and endurance of this. Thank you very much for coming to Columbia.
And thank you, sir, for having us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats as we escort the President and his delegation from the building. Thank you.